Thank you for watching. My name's Glen Morgan, and this is We the Govern. Today we're going to be talking about how Washington State's Department of Ecology allows toxic waste piles like this in their front yard. In Washington State, we have the Department of Ecology, which is a state agency that I've written about numerous times in the past and done quite a few stories about. I always like talking about them, but I haven't done anything about them lately, and it seems like it's about time. So very specifically, I went up to the Department of Ecology campus a couple days ago and walked around with my camera, and these are the types of photos that I took right in their front yard. Now, I admit I haven't been through that green space in a couple years, so it was a lot worse and a lot more shocking than I expected, which raises the question, what the heck is going on? Why is the Department of Ecology allowing these kind of toxic waste piles to appear right in their front yard, right in front of their building? And to understand kind of the situation here, you really have to understand the Department of Ecology has been the lead agency in the state of Washington in the environmental movement that's been focused on harassing and suing and attacking small landowners and farmers who have a cow or a horse in their pasture for the concept of the potential to pollute. So not actually polluting, just having the potential to pollute. And we did a story back in 2016 on the Cross family and their horse up in Whatcom County and what the Department of Ecology did to them.
Our story begins with the Department of Ecology and Jessica Fitzpatrick about mid-May of 2016. She made it clear to me there was a huge problem out here on the Kelly Road with our horse and llama on a 3-acre pasture, potentially polluting the Silver Creek watershed.
The Department of Ecology claimed that animal waste could somehow pollute the watershed, even though there is no stream on or near the Cross property. And as sad as that story was, the Department of Ecology seemed to only be happy once that horse was dead. And the Cross family, really got traumatized by that whole experience with the agency. And they aren't alone. I did many stories on this. Now, the current director is Laura Watson, and a lot of people don't realize this. When you look at the Department of Ecology and you drive up there, there's a number of other other agencies, I should say, that are located in the same building. So, for instance, Washington State's Conservation Commission is located there. The federal EPA is located there, same building. They're on the lower floor. And if you just drive around behind the campus, you'll see that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Marine Fisheries Service is also located there. So most of the environmental agencies in the state of Washington are all kind of clustered together on this one campus. Many of them in the front building, but also a couple in the buildings in back. And when you go to the Department of Ecology website, this is how they want to represent their campus. A nice, beautiful building with a beautiful rainbow over the top, Photoshop it in, make it look good. It looks beautiful and wonderful. Bluebird butterflies and sunshine. Who can go wrong with working in a wonderful facility like this? And they're not entirely wrong. The building is beautiful and the location is really interesting, and it's surrounded by a lot of green spaces. If you actually look here in Lacey, Washington, where the headquarters is located, not too far away from the state capitol in Olympia, obviously you can see this, all these trees around, just lots of, it's a beautiful campus, lots of green spaces. This is their watershed, but if you actually look closer, as I did when I went up there the other day, this is what you're gonna see. The green spaces are filled with garbage and toxic waste. And more specifically, you're going to see this kind of an image anywhere you go when you go around the campus, at least a few days ago when I was there with my camera. You'll see pictures like this, just massive piles of garbage everywhere. And you'll see places like this, Bike Chop Shop, which was a particular bonus to find in the Department of Ecology campus, where it looked like they were taking apart bikes that if you're missing any in the neighborhood, they probably ended up here first before they got disassembled and traded for cash for meth or whatever else they were going to use. And it's not that alone, that whatever they decided they couldn't recycle, they decided to put into big piles of garbage right next door. Of course, you also had the obvious disposal and disassembly of small engines where they were dumping oil and fuel and other toxic waste into the environment on Department of Ecology campus. The Department of Ecology has fined many people around the state of Washington for doing something similar or even accidentally having something like that happen on their property, and it appears to be going on full-time in the Department of Ecology front yard right now. They also had a bonus open pit latrine on the Department of Ecology campus. Right within sight, actually, you could stand there and look back at their windows on their campus. And I mean, they haven't allowed this in forever, and yet that's going on right there. Obviously, there were illegal burns that have been going on that occasionally got out of control in the woods there and the green spaces around the Department of Ecology campus. Trees were burned, and you could see a lot of debris laying around. And it wasn't just wood, it was garbage, outdoor garbage burning on the Department of Ecology campus right there. In addition, because you have a lot of junkies, these are junkie camps, a lot of drug addicts in the woods, they made endless piles of hazardous drug needles that were piled up there. Just massive piles of these. Everywhere you looked, they were. Everywhere. You had to be really careful just taking photos, walking around, because there were needles everywhere in the woods and the green spaces there. And of course, they had garbage pits, really just landfills of toxic waste on the Department of Ecology campus. I don't know exactly everything that was buried there. I didn't feel like digging into it myself. I just took these photos. But I'm telling you, it was it was just nasty. And it just stretches on for hundreds of yards into the woods all around their campus. And when I stood out in the parking lot, I took this photo. This is basically the image that ecology employees would have if they just looked in the woods from their office buildings, from their offices actually in the building, or if they're driving out and they're leaving the employee parking lot. This is what they would see. And when you're driving in, if you look to the left, this is what you would see as well. Basically, these freeways that junkies and other people that were dragging stuff into the woods and dumping the garbage in there, this is what you would see. This isn't like it was an unknown thing going on there. They had to see it every day. Even the director, Laura Watson, had to see this every day that she went to her office on the Department of Ecology campus. There was no way to miss it. I mean, this is what the the ecology campus looks like today. And that's hardly the poster child for environmental stewardship, and yet that's what was going on. Now, Director Laura Watson has only been there since 2020. She was appointed by Governor Inslee that year. So she's had most of this toxic waste pile and all the stuff that you see here, most of this has actually appeared on her watch since she's been director of the agency. Now, she was a former Attorney General employee, and she spent much of her time in the Attorney General's office litigating against and destroying the lives of small farmers and small property owners around the state of Washington. So she's very experienced with cases like the Cross family, where you would go after a small property owner and destroy their lives over the potential to pollute, not even any real pollution. And she was very well qualified for this position because she had a philosophy degree with an emphasis in women's studies. But unlike most of the people who work at the Department of Ecology, she is not an Evergreen College student graduate. So Governor Inslee appointed her, and everything that I've talked about here, this has happened on her watch. So she's directly responsible for the big piles that have appeared here. And it's kind of inexplicable because when I drove around to the backside of the parking lot in Ecology and took pictures of all of these trailers and disaster recovery trailers and response spill team trailers, all kinds of supplies that the taxpayers have paid for that are just sitting there unused, you would think that they have at least some level of supply on site and equipment on site and the employees there who would be willing to go out and actually clean things up. I mean, after all, if you can get a bunch of kids to go along the freeway and clean up all the garbage there, or get a scout troop to leave no trace and pick up everything behind them, why can't, and I don't think it's too much to ask for, why can't you actually get some of those ecology employees who claim they care about the environment to go just clean up their own front yard? After all, when I took a picture of this just as an example of one of the employees' cars that were parked in the parking lot there, you can see there's plenty of virtue signaling going on. It's a Prius. They're identifying the proper political support that you must have in order to work at the Department of Ecology. And you would think that there would be at least some level of virtue signaling associated at the bare minimum, and just to clean up the garbage that's sitting literally right outside their front yard. But this goes back to a concern that I've had. I've raised this for many years, ever since I've been involved in activism in Washington State, this obvious hypocrisy that exists with the environmental movement in general and personified here by the agencies, and that there's massive pollution that actually is going on in the community, and they do nothing about it. This is an article I wrote back in 2019. In the Percival Creek watershed, which is only about 15 minutes away from the Department of Ecology. It's a salmon habitat, and the state taxpayers, we spent millions of dollars to rehabilitate this and make it into this beautiful salmon habitat, and yet garbage is being just dumped into that creek, and it's being used as a convenient way to dispose of toxic waste from these camps and human waste. And when the salmon would come up, then they would spear and kill all the salmon. And no agency, State Fish and Wildlife, Department of Ecology, environmental groups, they're totally silent on it. They don't do anything. They don't say anything. And that was also illustrated when we were doing these drone shots of this homeless camp that was located right on Capitol Lake, right next to Puget Sound, just 50 feet away from the water, from the actual open water here. And it's the equivalent of basically a landfill that was piling up here along the lake. These homeless camps, junkie camps, where they were just dumping massive piles of garbage. And it looks like a landfill. It was really starting to look like a massive landfill that was going on. And that's why people were starting to call it Camp Inslee, because you could see it from Inslee's mansion, at the governor's mansion up on the hill. It was just piling up there. And I think because we covered it and a lot of other people did as well, they finally went in and cleaned it up a little bit, but it's really just a temporary cleanup. They're just going to allow it to keep piling up garbage there more and more. And this is where, if you're going to care about the environment, and you actually do care about the environment, you're going to start to spend a little bit of time focusing on the obvious pollution that's occurring here that's been unacceptable for 100 years, let alone in 2021. It just doesn't make any sense. Now, unfortunately, we see some of this hypocrisy or lack of focus when it associates, the Department of Ecology will go after a property owner that's 30 miles away from Puget Sound. It's claiming their septic system has a potential to pollute. And yet, when we look at massive raw dumps of millions of gallons of raw sewage, like this article from 2017 shows, the Department of Ecology essentially does nothing. Same with in 2019, when the same facility dumps 4.5 million gallons of raw sewage. I think it was 15 million gallons eventually later on that year. And earlier this year, when they dumped millions of gallons more of raw sewage. Or when the other facility across the way in Kitsap County dumps raw sewage into Puget Sound. The Department of Ecology is nowhere to be found. And when people were starting to explore how much the RVs, illegal RVs that were being parked all over Seattle, were actually dumping raw sewage all over the streets and into the Puget Sound, into the lakes and the parks there, again, the Department of Ecology was doing nothing. We could even quantify that at least back in 2019, it was estimated to be at least 1 million gallons of raw sewage being dumped there, and yet the Department of Ecology does nothing, and it's probably a lot worse than that now. And instead, what is the Department of Ecology doing? Well, they decided that they're going to go out and sue a bunch of farmers in Whatcom County. I mean, that's what they're going to spend their time doing. They'll ignore the real pollution and they'll attack farmers. This is the behavior and the strategy, apparently, of the Department of Ecology, to ignore real problems and then to focus on situations where they can harass people just in order to create more problems. Now, the problem is that in order for this toxic waste pile to appear on the Department of Ecology's campus, they had to ignore it for years, right in their front yard. They had to just say, they had to just drive right by this every day and pretend like it's not happening, as big and as huge as it was growing. And yet, they went out of their way to harass people, like the Crosses here, to basically claim that their horse was the biggest polluter in the watershed. And in fact, the only time that they stopped harassing the Crosses is when the horse died, as it was really an old horse at that point in time anyway. And then they were happy. The Department of Ecology was satisfied. Fine, the horse died, now they're happy. This really creates some problems here because the Department of Ecology treats their own property like this picture you can see here. Well, they are suing farmers and landowners for the potential to pollute. So they don't even bother to clean up their own front yard, and they sue everybody else who basically are managing their land quite well, claiming that they're the problem in the environment, and that's just obviously not true. So if I was going to send a message to Laura Watson, the director of the Department of Ecology, I would say clean up your own front yard first. The backyard, front yard, just your whole green space, because it's been turned into a trash heap and your employees have been driving by it, including yourself, for years doing nothing about it. Secondly, prioritize massive pollution problems over the potential problems to pollute. It might be a little bit more effective if you go after these green spaces in urban environments where massive pollution events are clearly occurring and try to resolve those issues first before you go after the farmer living hundreds of miles away out in the middle of nowhere with their horse or their cow, claiming that their potential to pollute is the biggest problem in your agency's plate. And finally, if I was going to speak to Director Watson right now, I would say, will you clean up your own backyard first? Now, if you want to see the story about the Cross family, a video we did a few years ago, it's an evergreen story, and you can link to it here. It's really quite interesting considering the situation that we covered in this video. And if you want to learn more, please feel free to go to wethegovern.com. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video with others. The more people who see it, I think, the better off we all are. And remember, the future does belong to those who show up.